I want to thank the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations for making this conference possible, and I want to use this opportunity to welcome our international guests and my brothers and sisters here present. We are mourning our children killed in Kumba by unidentified gunmen. Our hearts go to the bereaved families as Southern Cameroons join you to mourn the death of your lovely kids. I hope that this incident and what the international community will witness at this virtual conference will make them to stop condemning in the strongest terms possible and take necessary action. My contribution at this conference is limited to clarifying two important matters: the question about negotiating with La République du Cameroon and the characterization of the armed conflict in the southern Cameroons, Ambazonia. Let me begin with negotiations with La République du Cameroon. Let me say up front that we have always been ready to negotiate. The problem is that Cameroon has been running away from negotiation for over half a century. The international community would be surprised to learn that for over half a century, we have in vain been calling for negotiation with Cameroon to resolve the Southern Cameroon's question. During that period, we preached and practiced the gospel of nonviolence or passive resistance. It is a gospel founded on our dogma, the force of argument, and not the argument of force. We spent decades sending deputations and memoranda to La République du Cameroon. We spent decades conducting peaceful demonstrations. We spent decades litigating. We did all this in pursuit of our passive resistance action. But these sustained peaceful efforts elicited nothing from La République du Cameroon, a country born and raised by France in a culture of violent repression and oppression. Its military employed extreme armed violence using live ammunition and hand grenades. This wicked, systematic use of violence always resulted in the loss of scores of lives, maiming, arbitrary arrests, and imprisonment and torture. Our repeated calls for negotiation goes as far as 1962. In that year, the government of West Cameroon called in vain for negotiation to fix the observed gross distortion in the working of the Federation. La République du Cameroon responded by unleashing a reign of terror using its draconian subversion ordinance of the same year. In the 1960s and the 1970s, many citizens of the southern Cameroons, Anthony Gunjo, Albert Mukong, Martin Yai, and Eta Oben, for example, were arbitrarily arrested, imprisoned, and tortured in odious outposts specifically constructed and fitted for torture. These outposts were known as BMM, Brigade Mixed Mobile Centers. They were always located in the outskirts of settlements to conceal their sinister activities. In the 1980s, Barrister Gorgin Dinka called in vain for a conference of the two Cameroons and submitted written concrete proposals on the way forward for the two countries. He was arbitrarily arrested, tortured, and put through the motion of a pretended trial in the Cameroon's notorious infamous military tribunal. In the 1990s, the Social Democratic Front, the All Anglophone Conference, and the Southern Cameroon's National Council repeatedly called for a return to the two-state federation that was agreed upon before the plebiscite as the basis of political association with La République du Cameroon. These calls fell on deaf ears. In fact, each call was met with brutal force, resulting in deaths and mayhem. In Gumne and Al versus Cameroon in 2003 to 2006, the African Human Rights Commission advised Cameroon not to sweep under the carpet the colonial question raised by complainants in the case, but to speedily attend to it. The Commission offered its good offices in that endeavor. La République du Cameroon spawned the commission. Between 2008 and 2010, the Southern Cameroon's People's Organization on several occasions called on Cameroon to negotiate with Southern Cameroons to peacefully resolve the Southern Cameroon's question. These calls also fell on deaf ears. Violence was visited on those in support of the call, and in 2016, lawyers, teachers, and civil society organizations staged a peaceful demonstration calling for the negotiation to resolve the Anglophone problem. Again, the République du Cameroon ignored the call and instead unleashed violence on the demonstrators, arbitrarily arrested and imprisoned hundreds of them, including the leaders of those organizations. Surely, we cannot reasonably be expected to spend eternity calling in vain for La République du Cameroon to come to the negotiation table. That country ridiculously believes that its French-derived culture of systematic and widespread brutal armed repression will avail it something. It will not. The recent pogrom in Kumba is simply the latest of a long line of massacres routinely perpetrated in the southern Cameroons by La République du Cameroon going back to 1961. The following pogroms suffice to illustrate the point. Ebutu, 1961. Abendong assassination, an attempted assassination of the life of John Gu Foncha, 1963. Tombel, 1966. Bamenda, 1990. Ndu, 1994. Boya University, 2005. Boya University, 2007. And the dozens of massacres that have taken place since 2017 until date. These massacres and many others point to a pattern of deliberate use of terrorization by Cameroon to try to attain its political goals of colonization and territorial aggrandizement. Since 2017, Cameroon has exported its practice of terrorism abroad by attacking there its perceived enemies. Brussels, Belgium in 2017, Abuja, Nigeria in 2018, Geneva, Switzerland in 2019, Rotterdam, Holland, and Washington, D.C., USA in October 2020. The so-called Embassy of Cameroon in Washington, D.C. is a nest of terrorist activities. Though through it, Cameroon hires dubious characters to carry out judicial terrorism, physical terrorism, and lobbying and media terrorism. I mentioned Cameroon's congenital culture of violence and terrorism, and its demonstrated long record of barbarism in the southern Cameroons. I do so because many people seriously doubt whether it's even advisable to sit down with a country that is not only horrible, but is also soaked in the innocent blood of our people. Furthermore, La République du Cameroon is near chaotic, it's near bankrupt. French vassal state, deeply mired in systematic corruption and decaying in many aspects. Rival tribal factions are fighting in that country to succeed its 88 years old putative ruler. The legitimacy of that ruler's power is highly contested. The regime itself is a despotic gerontocracy of mainly octogenarians. It is old and tired, completely lacking in innovative and progressive ideas. It is in the throes of demise. It is anyone's guess who really is in charge in that country. Further still, Cameroon has a sad and long track record of deception, fraud, manipulation, and untrustworthiness. It suffers from a huge moral and credibility deficit. The military outfit there is very visible and is having a field day. If we were to negotiate with the current government in Cameroon, we need guarantees as a precautionary measure that it can be held to honor its side of the bargain. We need guarantees that agreements concluded with it will not be disowned by its domestic constituencies or France, or that it will not be overthrown. We doubt that these guarantees are likely to be forthcoming any quarter. It might therefore well be prudent to wait for a legitimate government in that country with which to do business. After all, the abused and long-suffering people of that country also have a right to self-determination. The République du Cameroon cannot do anything without the fiat of France. So maybe we should seriously consider negotiating directly with France rather than with its vassal state. 2. Characterization of the armed conflict. The armed conflict ranging in the southern Cameroons is La République du Cameroon's colonial war, which it launched in that territory some 4 years ago. It is like previous colonial wars elsewhere. It uses the same propaganda rhetoric of so-called terrorists, terrorism, secession, and law and order. It is like the colonial war of Morocco in the Western Sahara, of Imperial Ethiopia in Eritrea, of apartheid South Africa in Namibia, of Indonesia in East Timor, of Portugal in its African colonies, and of France in Algeria. Just as France claimed delusively that l'Algérie est française, so too is La République du Cameroon's delusional claim that the southern Cameroons, l'Ambazonie est camerounaise, c'est notre territoire. Portugal too claimed that its African territories were not colonies, but part of the metropolitan territories of Portugal that happened to be separated from the mother territory by mere accident of geography. In each of these cases, the colonizing state sought to impose itself on the colonial territory by force of arms. La République du Cameroon's expansionist claim to the territory of southern Cameroons is an attempt to create a territorial situation that gives it permanent, unimpeded access to the impressive natural resources of southern Cameroons, like oil, gas, gold, coltan, bauxite, timber, food crops, plantation crops such as banana, rubber, coffee, tea, and a lot more. And its geographical facilities and its strategic location in the Gulf of Guinea as a bridge between West Africa and what is still basically French Equatorial Africa. The parties to this armed conflict are La République du Cameroon on the one hand, and the southern Cameroons on the other hand. Our fighters are not what is sometimes referred to as non-state armed groups involved in an internal conflict within the territory of Cameroon. They are guerrilla fighters, liberation fighters. Their fight, our fight, is an anti-colonial struggle. Our guerrilla fighters are fighting a war of national liberation to vindicate the right of self-determination of the peoples of southern Cameroons. Some might say, but the Trust Territory of southern Cameroons exercised the rights to self-determination at the plebiscite on 11 February 1961. That is true. However, in international law, self-determination is not a single event. It is not one revolution or one election. It is a continuing right. It is not exhausted upon its first exercise. It cannot be forfeited by a colonial people once they have been chosen to end their stage of political tutelage. Such people may subsequently wish to alter their political status. They may need to exercise the right again if their territory is colonized or militarily occupied by another state. La République du Cameroon launched its colonial war in Ambazonia in the expectation of achieving two principal objectives. The first objective is to procure the acquisition of the territory of Ambazonia by force of arms and then permanently occupy and incorporate it as part of the territory of La République du Cameroon. Cameroon's war propaganda tries very hard to camouflage this war aimed by attempting to promote the fiction that it is fighting so-called terrorism and secession. This is an implausible claim. It has no basis in law, politics, or even geography. It has consistently been rejected by the Southern Cameroon's people. La République du Cameroon's second objective is pursuing its colonial war. In pursuing its colonial war is its reckless and foredoomed quests to permanently dominate, subjugate, and assimilate the people of Southern Cameroon. In that insidious manner, Cameroon hopes to be able to destroy the people of Southern Cameroon and their identity as a people. Getting the people of Southern Cameroon as additional population will give it much needed human resources that is qualified, hardworking, dedicated, and disciplined. This war is not an internal armed conflict, as some have mistakenly supposed it to be. Rather, it's a war of national liberation. It's an international armed conflict. In this war, every citizen of ours is fighting for freedom. We are all fighting to be free from the bonds of La République du Cameroon's colonialism. We are doing so in exercise of our unquestionable and inalienable rights of self-determination. The war of national liberation is unavoidable, and it is totally justified. First, because our very existence and survival as a people is at stake. And second, because our dignity, worth, and humanity impose upon us the necessity to free ourselves from Cameroon's horrible colonial oppression and bonds of domination. We have always reminded ourselves that it is not the duty of the oppressor to free the oppressed, because the oppressor has no interest in doing that. It is the duty of the oppressed to free themselves. Sometimes one hears the comment that we voted to join La République du Cameroon. It needs repeating that we voted first and foremost for independence in accordance with Article 76B of the Charter of the United Nations. That independence was endorsed by the United Nations General Assembly. As a subsidiary matter, we also voted for political association with La République du Cameroon on a federal basis, a two-state disaggregative federation. La République du Cameroon confirmed this in a note verbal to the United Kingdom, a unilateral treaty that was also made available to the United Nations. A federation involves a dovetailing rather than a suppression of legal orders. The Southern Cameroons related to but not part of La République du Cameroon. On 1st October 1961, trusteeship was terminated. Britain relinquished authority over the government of the Southern Cameroons. The Southern Cameroons became independent, notwithstanding the controversies to the contrary by the administering authority. The Cameroon Federation was born as a federation of two independent states. However, each independent state embraced the status of a federated state within an overarching federal state, a subject of international law. The Southern Cameroons became West Cameroon. Republic of Cameroon was extinct and became East Cameroon. Citizens of East Cameroon origin virtually monopolized the federal government and started treating West Cameroon very badly. They did so to the point where they staged a pretended referendum in 1972 to procure the extinguishment of West Cameroon. They abolished the federation. They decreed West Cameroon politically out of existence. They, in effect, formally annexed West Cameroon, and in 1984, they claimed to have completed the process of integrating the territory and its people into French-speaking Cameroon. French Cameroon then announced the resumption of its former political status as a distinct, independent, sovereign state, but now with increased territory on account of the annexation of former West Cameroon. What Cameroon Republic did from 1972 onwards signal another situation of a new form of colonialism in Africa, black on black colonialism. The Southern Cameroons rejected it and continues to actively reject it. Cameroon's colonial war aims at making this colonialism stick. Let me use this opportunity to address the citizens of La République du Cameroon. The people of Southern Cameroon recognize your distinct character from ours. Your rush to study in English in our schools, even though English is not compulsory in your French curriculum, but compulsory for our people. The governor of Beyak attested to the fact that they were not part of Beyak as reflected in your currency. The Southern Cameroons is and has always been separate and distinct from La République du Cameroon geographically, ethnically, culturally, attitudinally, historically, and identity-wise. We are respectful but strong to our ideals. That is why you have not been our target in this war of independence, but may eventually be if your government does not cease from killing our people. Our resilience is far more than have been demonstrated. Our people came out in 2016 and 2017 despite your government's killings. And ghost towns have sustained despite the abuse your government subject on our citizens. Our train to independence had long left, and there is nothing that can stop us from being recognized as an independent state of the Southern Cameroons. La République du Cameroon remains a foreign country in relation to the Southern Cameroons. And for the purpose of future relationship, let me urge you to tell your government to stop killing our children, our mothers, our sisters, our brothers, and negotiate. Before this war gets to you, let it be known that we have shown respect and humanity. Let it be known that you have not protested for your government to negotiate with the Southern Cameroons. And to all Southern Cameroonians, if you are a truck pusher, if you are a buy and seller, a Bensikin, a doctor, a lawyer, a professor, or whoever you may be, we must stand up and fight to liberate ourselves. If we do not fight, La République du Cameroon will own our land. If we do not fight, our children's future is doomed. If we do not fight, we'll never have our freedoms and dignity as a people. Let us come together in whatever groupings we belong to as a people, because as one, we know how to do this and get what we want. This is the greatest fight of our lives. The political status of the people of Southern Cameroons can only be determined by them alone. It can never be determined by another people or state. Thank you.